people within all the different countries as they're being exposed to the area. So their journalists from their different countries are going to be highlighting
retail.
The city.
What about our people?
Okay. Our people, retail for the Pittsburgh area, it may, they're claiming, the Visitors Bureau claiming in the Pittsburgh area that we're going to be getting between $8 and $10 million extra money coming in. Keep in mind, all the dignitaries, all of their people, all of the journalists, all of the external people are coming in, are staying at hotels, they're eating at restaurants, they're spending money that we typically wouldn't have. Well, so that is a positive thing. That's money that we wouldn't have had. Tax money that we also wouldn't have.
But we're going to need all of that to pay for the extra security for all the police officers.
Well, hopefully we're getting a lot of federal funding too.
Well,
some hopefully.
Hopefully.
Yeah, I'm guessing that we will.
All right. Now, what about the retail? What about all the stores that are going to be closing, and all the businesses that aren't restaurants? And assuming the restaurant's going to be open, what about them? What kind of? Has anyone done a prediction on the number of sales? That
Excuse me. Sorry, sir.
Oh, I can't.
Oh, you broke a rule. I did. I'm so sorry.
Oh my gosh!
Sorry.
And we were doing so well too. You know.
Keep going. Keep going.
These editors-in-chief. I could go on with these people. That's quite all right. So you okay? Seriously? All right. Great. So. Tell me now about, has anyone, like the Allegheny Conference on Community Development or the Mayor's Office or anyone, maybe Duquesne University, let me ask the question before you answer it, about analyzing the amount of money that we're going to be losing in retail sales. Has anybody done this?
Well, the big question now is we don't know, because we don't know which businesses are going to be able to stay open, which ones are going to be encouraged to close.
But you could certainly have different models if we had 10% closing, 50% closing, 75%. Has anybody done this yet? Is my question.
As far as I know, I don't think anyone
Well,
has.
I think it goes back to until all of the security issues are addressed, I don't think that can be answered. And I think, again, you have to look at the positive. We have thousands of people that are going to be coming in here. I mean, you look at the Warhol, we have these internationally renowned galleries, the Mattress Factory on the North Side, Carnegie Science Center. Of course, I'm with the North Side Chamber of Commerce.
I'm noticing a pattern here.
Yeah, but I mean, we have these people.
And Gus's, don't forget Gus's.
Yeah. But we're preparing for those folks to come, because it's not just, you're going to have the people that are going to be in the convention center, and that's where they're going to be for the entire summit. But they're bringing an entire entourage of folks, and they may have children, they may have, you know, a whole myriad of people.
Go if the city is essentially
shut down? No, they're not shutting down
here, so they're going to be eating at the restaurants.
Essentially shut down.
Well, but they're not shutting down the cultural institutions, and they're not shutting down. Oakland's not shutting down. They're not shutting down any of the other museums.
But isn't that where the protest parade is going to be, from Oakland to as near the convention center as Secret Service will allow them?
Well,
what kind of disruption is that going to cause the Oakland merchants?
Again, I don't know. It's, you know, everything is up in the air until we get some sort of, you know, whatever, as the days get closer and we get some sort of security.
It's going to happen in 3 weeks and we still don't have these answers. Does this not trouble anybody else?
I think the problem is they can't really give us a lot of information. They have to keep security very tight. They've had meetings with small business owners in the areas and talked to them and give them some advice and some recommendations. And so I think
shut down.
Like shut down.
Not all.
But you know, at each group.
No, I understand, but I do think that is the encouraging word
for most businesses.
Another aspect regarding the G20 summit. Post-Gazette had this story this morning, and it was about the mayor apparently slipping in a little thing in his overall plan that essentially suspended the Second Amendment during the G20 summit. That if you had any kind of different types of firearms, that for those two, I'm paraphrasing here, but essentially that if you have any kind of firearm and anyone catches you with it, you're automatically going to be arrested, that's not allowed during the G20 summit. So my question is this: should the Second Amendment be suspended for 2 days in the name of protecting the public, public safety, for the G20 summit? Should the Second Amendment be suspended?
That's such a leading question. I mean, really.
But you're a lawyer.
I know, but I still think, my goodness, because I thought you said that it was just the assault weapons.
No, that was part of it.
I thought it was specifically, or is it the entire? There are no.
I thought it was assault.
Well, then how are they going to have security then?
But okay, even the so-called assault weapons.
Okay.
The Second Amendment still covers them as well. So the question is, should the Second Amendment be suspended?
Well, let's look at it from a different perspective, okay? If you're going to the Civic Arena to go to a concert, are you allowed to bring your gun in there?
No.
Picture the entire city being the Civic Arena for 2 days.
It's a special event.
It's a giant special event.
Exactly.
So if it's a special event, then the Bill of Rights, the Second Amendment, should not be enforced.
I still think you're stretching this, because if in fact that was
gun ownership.
Yeah,
they
but
have to
in
have ownership.
fact,
They
they
don't
would have
necessarily
to-
have to carry it with them into
Right.
the city,
Yeah, you
into the
don't-
different venues.
And if you
Yeah,
have
you
a
still can
permit
have-
to carry, and if you have a permit to carry,
Well, you probably always have an overriding, what's in the best interest of the public. So, and in that case, the way that they've
as Robin was
described
saying,
it.
into any arenas.
Right.
Yeah,
or
and so yeah,
stadiums.
just think of it as a
Except
big,
these
like
are-
we
this is
dome over the
public-
whole city.
Right. This is public property. These are our streets.
Except for it's a
These are-
special time.
So when it's a special time, we can suspend Second
For
Amendment
the
rights.
safety of everyone.
Yes,
So
but
then-
you want it both ways. Because, see, you're saying you don't want that, but then you're saying the G20 is going to be terrible, and one of the reasons is this possible civil unrest, right?
Well, based on what other cities have done, sure.
Right. Well,
But
then
again-
why would you want them to have guns? I don't quite understand you.
I
your
would want-
rationale here, do you?
Well, then let me explain it to you, Christine.
Okay, good.
It's not that I want people to have guns. It's that
Right.
I want people to be able to exercise the right to have a weapon if they so choose, to legally exercise their right. And if it's okay to suspend the Second Amendment, then would it be okay to suspend the First Amendment just for 2 days, also in the name of the public safety, and make it very difficult for protesters to really organize, to march anywhere near the David L. Lawrence Convention
See,
Center?
I don't. Yeah, I think you're stretching it. I think that
How
I
so?
think peaceful protest. There is absolutely nothing wrong with peaceful
No.
protest. And when you look back, I was thinking about this because we're sort of like Pittsburgh was the beginning. I mean, you think
Yeah.
back of when Andrew Carnegie, and
the Whiskey
yeah, and
Rebellion.
all of those things were
You know
here.
what mattered to us?
So we have a lot of history when it comes to protesters, and I think we've learned a lot about that as far as
Right.
peaceful protest. And I think that I just think the culture here. I think that the way people interact. That I just think that maybe we have a lot that we can offer in terms of helping people have peaceful protests.
But what about the
Right.
fact that the
Yeah.
permits, the way it's been dragged out with these poor people who do want to protest, and believe me, I'm not a fan of far left wing or far right wing crazies. I am absolutely
You're not an anarchist.
No.
I didn't think so.
My goodness, I'm a libertarian, for heaven's sakes. We actually want to adhere to the Constitution. Imagine that. But in fairness to these people, they've been strung along for so long here, and now when they got these permits, they actually could not be worth the paper they're printed on, because the mayor said, essentially the mayor said that, well, if the Secret Service okays this, then you can congregate in Point State Park and some of these other places. But we're still waiting. How is this fair?
Don't you think we need to have some kind of structure for them? They can't just be
Yes.
wild and everyone.
Yes.
Remember what
That's
happened in
just- that's what
Seattle?
I'm
We
saying.
need
Right.
to have the control. We
Right.
need to have the say-so as to there's nothing wrong with saying you can protest here and you can protest
But I
here.
want the structure. That's
they
just
can't
it.
have well, then,
But the problem is the protesters, ironically, are the ones who are trying to obey the law. They're going to the city government saying, "We want permits."
See,
Here's
only
what
in
we want
Pittsburgh
to
would
do."
that happen. Isn't that beautiful?
Well, it is,
Yeah.
but the protesters now have these pieces of paper that may not be worth anything, so it's going to be very difficult for them to organize, so they won't be able to use properly their First Amendment right, free speech, also the right of assembly, because they're being strung along, and no one seems to
But
really care
wait,
about
I think this goes back to my previous point.
Yeah.
That, well, first of all, we never hosted a G20 before, so we have there's no experience here. It's not like you can go back and blame our leaders about that, because we really there
Right.
is no experience with
cities
doing
have,
that.
Right.
And so I think, and it also goes back to that security issue. Until those perimeters are set by the Secret Service, I think that, I think that, we as a city, that we would welcome the protesters in peaceful marches wherever they can go within the safety parameters. But I think that because those haven't been established, I think that possibly is why it seems a little wishy-washy right now.
Okay, and I thank you very much for that. We have to take another short break, always a short break. And when we come back, we're going to impanel a jury. My 3 guests are going to be on a jury, and we're going to pretend that Dr. Conrad Murray, Jacko's personal physician, is going to be charged with this death of Michael Jackson. Now, if you just heard, Michael Jackson's death has been ruled a homicide, and while his personal doctor has not been charged yet, we're going to pretend, for the sake of discussion, that he is going to be charged, and we're going to have our panelists decide, as jurors, what, if anything, they would do with this guy. Who's really at fault here? That's next. This is Night Talk, Get to the Point. I'm Dimitri Vassilaris, News Talk Radio 1020 host Saturday evenings, and also with Pittsburgh Tribune Review. We'll be right back. See, I told you it'd be a short break. It's Night Talk, Get to the Point. My name is Dimitri Vanasolaris, News Radio 1020 KDK, and also Pittsburgh Tribune Review. And our wonderful panel is going to be now placed on a jury. And we're going to decide what, if anything, should be done if Dr. Conrad Murray is charged in the death of Michael Jackson. Michael Jackson's death has now been ruled a homicide. And so what, if anything, are we going to do if Dr. Murray is charged? Is he really the one responsible for Michael Jackson's death? So, if you were on the jury, Audrey, let's start with you.
Okay.
What would you be looking at with this?
Well, I would first of all look at previous health and history of Michael Jackson. Not that that's any secret, but we all know that he's had issues as far as drugs and all his operations, etc. So he wasn't the healthiest person. So my concern would be, was it simply that dosage that the doctor gave him at that day that he passed away or a few days before that caused it, or is the fact that that accumulation of drugs and a poor lifestyle over time, the fact that he was getting ready for the big concerts and he was working out and he was trying to literally get physically fit in a very short amount of time, the fact that he's in his 50s, not in good health, chances are I would really need evidence that it was the drugs that killed him. As
A real smoking gun is what you're saying.
Yeah, I would need strong evidence.
Robin, what about you?
Well, I think that if I understand what homicide is, and I'm not an attorney, so you can clear this up for me.
I'll tell you, okay.
But I think that if a homicide means that you willfully are trying to kill someone. If you are on your cell phone and you walk out of the room after you've given someone a dose of whatever it was that he was taking, then that's neglect, and isn't that malpractice?
No.
There's
No. You can be charged with that, and it is a level of homicide, and it isn't always based on intent. It can be reckless endangerment, and so that's the fact that he may be charged with homicide is clearly obvious. He will be, because he clearly played a part intentionally or recklessly, you know, in this man's death.
Well, we don't know that for sure. These are allegations at this point. I mean, we've got to be fair here.
Right. Oh, right. Uh-huh.
So if you're on the jury, what would you do? Would you say, okay, since the doctor, if the doctor gave him...
Such a leap you're asking us to make, my goodness.
Well, sure, this is not a courtroom.
Convict now.
This is a talk show, for heaven's sakes. Or find him not guilty because it was Michael Jackson who made all these terrible decisions about his
Who was
own
already
life.
half embalmed.
Well, yeah. So what would you do? What should the minimum be? What minimum penalty, if any penalty at all, for Dr. Conrad Murray?
Well, he's probably going to get 20 to 20 or 25 years. Probably won't get to life, so he'll get that. And then there'll probably be civil charges. He was very well paid, you know. So there are other issues, ethical issues, certainly to look at. But his culpability may be a little bit more cut and dry than you realize.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I don't know. It's hard for us. I mean, we don't have all the facts, but I mean, just based in what we've learned in the media, you know. And is that how we try people?
Well, yeah, sure.
Oh, okay.
Well, yeah. Why do you think we're here? Sure. This is
Right.